Irashaimase! Hello and welcome to Fitaurus' Kitchen. I'm your host, Chef Fitaurus. It's time once again for Shoot 'em Up Saturday, and on the menu this Saturday we have Mars Chaos Menace, a new multi-platform shoot 'em up where we defend a terraformed Mars. What kind of taste will it have? Let's get cooking and find out. From developer Bit4 Games and publisher Badland Publishing, Mars Chaos Menace recently released on the Nintendo Switch, Steam, PlayStation 4, and Xbox One. As we start the game, we're taken to a file select screen where if you select an empty file, you're first asked to name the file and then pick a hero. So the difference between the two heroes is their shot types. Hero 1 has a relatively straight shot that's a little more powerful, and Hero 2 has a spread shot that's a little weaker. Then we have the 3 difficulties we can select. Once you select your difficulty, you're taken to the stage select screen. If we were to start the game at that point, we would get a short cutscene that is unskippable, so we'll move to this file so we can show a little bit more of what's going on. One thing that is nice about the stage select screen is once you've gotten to a stage, you can start the game from that particular stage. There are also extra stages between all of the 8 main stages, and you can even play those again if you're interested in aiming for new high scores. Jumping into Jungle Sector 1, we take control of the robot Eco 7 to defend the planet Mars. So we've got a straight shot that we can go and fire both in front of us and behind us. There are also power-ups like orbs that we can pick up to give us options, and those come in 2 different flavors. The green will give us the straight laser shot similar to the Hero 1, whereas the green gives us a spread shot like Hero 2. There are also a couple other weapons we have available. There's a plasma laser, which has a meter on the right side of the screen. As you use it, that meter fills up, fill it up all the way, and then the plasma laser will have to cool down before we're able to fire it again. The meter on the left is for our defensive shield. We can put that up and it will protect us from enemy shots. Though the more shots it absorbs, the longer it will need to remain off for it to recover its health. There are also specials, but for the life of me, I haven't been able to consistently find a way to actually earn those specials, so they're not something that I've had much, if any, experience with. And that's our basics for how we control Mars Chaos Menace. So the game itself just tasks us to go and fight through these enemy hordes. The basic idea is that human technology got to the point where we could start to terraform other planets, so we were able to go and recover Earth from the brink of ecological disaster, as it were. But that in and of itself awoken this menace from space that's now attacking Mars, and after Mars, obviously it'll hit the point where it's reaching Earth as well. So we're at the end of the first stage, and the stages are really beautifully designed. This is one thing I quite like about them, all these different environments. So this boss is a multi-stage fight where first we have to destroy these little nodules on his back, and when we destroy the nodules, there'll be these little enemies that pop out and charge at us. So those enemies will follow us until we're dead or they've timed out. So it's best if we can take them out in smaller groups, as they can really become problematic once they start to swarm you. Once all the nodules on his back are destroyed, the spider will awaken and will enter the second phase of this fight. Oh, they got me. And in the second phase of the fight, the spider is more actively moving around, firing these electro webs that we can get stuck in. as well as quite a few shots. If we do get stuck in them, that's a really great time to use our defensive shield. So one thing that we want to use to try and shorten this fight is our plasma laser. It deals a significantly greater amount of damage than our shots, and unfortunately we have no options. So that brings me to a point that I want to go and talk about. So the options are limited in time in this game, which what I mean by that is once you go and pick them up, even if you're not actively using them, they will decay and ultimately just disappear after a set period of time, leaving you weaker than you were, like, through no fault of your own. So some games with power-ups, I can go and understand the idea behind that, but where a game where you have no other way to really power up, that's definitely something that's very frustrating, and it's kind of a pet peeve of mine. Alright, so once you finish the stage, you could potentially restart the stage if you want to aim for a better score, or move on to the next stage, or potentially just exit, as you'll be able to come back and start on the stage that you just unlocked. We move on to the jungle sector 2 and begin our fight against the enemies here. The stages get significantly more difficult very quickly, and this game is one that depends not so much on responding to like random patterns, but more from handling the rather memorizing the patterns of the enemies that you've fought before. So not my favorite type of shoot 'em up design, but it's a sound enough design, I guess. One problem I do have though is you always have basically the 3 additional tries plus your like starting try to finish the stage. To my knowledge, there aren't any ways to earn 1-ups, and if you run out of lives, then you'll just have to restart the stage from the very beginning, which wouldn't be terrible, but as I say, the difficulty does go and increase, and where we have the ability to fire both in front and behind us, the game takes advantage of that by putting you in some situations where you're like often getting swarmed by a lot of enemies from multiple directions. So that's basically what we have here as far as Mars Chaos Menace. So the game itself is rather pretty. I really like the environment. The character that we play as is a little bland. It's, you know, just like a defense robot trying to fight off these massive hordes of invaders, as it were. But as far as, like, let's talk minus flavors and plus flavors. So minus flavors, the limited time option is a huge hit in my mind. It's like the only way to really increase your power, and when the game just goes and takes that away like in an almost arbitrary fashion, it's frustrating. It really is, as you can go and be doing really well, you get all these options, and then just because there's no more option towers, like if you're fighting a boss for example, the options will just wear off and fade away, and you'll just have to fight the boss basically at your base power. You do have the awesome plasma laser, so that helps mitigate that a little bit, but that really kills it for me. Also, when you run out of lives, starting the stage again at the beginning, where you can come back to the stage and try it time and time again, I understand, but it's not the kind of restart system that I like in really any way. The game itself is also extremely difficult, and as I mentioned, it relies heavily on you memorizing enemy patterns to be able to go and survive through a stage, instead of reacting more to the bullet hell that the enemies go and fire at you. As far as plus flavors, as you saw with the last boss fight there, each boss battle is relatively unique, presenting interesting challenges and fun pattern to learn. And that's one part I do enjoy quite a bit, is the boss battles, although admittedly the boss for the second underwater sector did prove frustrating with some of his attacks just being unavoidable if you were happen to go and be in the wrong section of the stage. So there's that. And also, just the visual look of the game I feel is great. So there we have it. Mars Chaos Menace served up for your enjoyment. So overall, this is not a game that I can recommend, especially on the Switch, which saw the release of 5 different shoot-'em-ups on the same week as this one. There were options that I would consider far superior to this one. So if you're looking for a challenging shoot-'em-up that is flawed, and potentially if you were to go and pick it up on sale, then this is one that I think you might want to go and take a look at, but for the most part, barring those qualifications, it's one that I would recommend taking a pass on. Alright, well, that'll just about wrap it up for this week's episode of Shoot 'em Up Saturday. As always, I want to thank you so much for coming out and joining me this week, and I look forward to seeing you again next week.